Okay, I'm going to take it away. Just really happy to see everybody in our little boxes. Um, and it's rare, as JC started out saying, "Oh, it's lucky that we have poets here today." That's not something that the poets are used to hearing. So, yeah, we like to be a little bit lucky today. We're going to sling some words. Mahogany Browne is one of the great poets, and I'm so excited. This is the first time we will have talked publicly together, as she has taken on the reins at the Bowery Poetry Club. Her first day was on March 16th, the day that the Bowery Poetry Club closed, the day that a lot of New York City closed. And so it's been a very different situation, which she has brilliantly moved on to the internet. And I was thinking that maybe we should announce you on the 1st of April, but that would be April Fool's Day. But April 2nd was Bob Kaufman's great poem, 2nd April, and that would be a great day to announce it. But instead, we've waited to today to announce it. So one of the great things about Mo is that she, as I said, is one of the great poets. So I thought, to heck with all this blah, blah, blah. Let's go straight there. Mo, did you bring a poem with you today?
I did. Okay. And it's the title right now is an epigraph from Tongo Isaac Martin's Black Freighter prose essay. A poet becomes a house of lightning. And an angel with a slanted halo rocks cracked salt on top sidewalks as the children cry for a future they ain't never gonna see. The wind is the afternoon's midwife, shocked by all the blood loss that crip walks like baton toss ready for Mayday. The lyrics could become a cradle strain if you close your eyes tight enough, if you forget who died for you to be here in the first place. And the poet writes you into memory. Neurons respond to the noose. The noose produces a sequence of nightmares on repeat since 2017, the contradictions, hiccuped and on loop. But the poet ain't on no sweet shit, can only remember the last time someone called themselves a revolutionary. The poet ain't got the time to stomach or romanticize freedom. She's too busy burying her comrades after the morning's battle. Look in your ranks. Call forward the double agent. You know them by sight. The same one to step on a Black woman's back and call it generational healing. But your mama was a good woman. She embroidered each baby's first and last name into cloth diapers. She thought her babies would come home. Your mama, a sturdy spine. She almost died trying to spit you into a constellation of your own. She ain't know her flesh would devolve into a sedity tongue. She ain't know the tongue would manufacture itself into a destructive God and call her a bitch when the whole world was looking. Your mama counted your fingers, toes, and hair follicles. Praise the Lord and his disciples for your beautiful mouth. The same mouth you practiced in the mirror using language to call another Black woman into a shallow grave. The Black woman is an easy target to a sloth with a lazy imagination. You the type to fight and slap jokes at a Black woman's back when she ain't give you her dinner plate. But the poet been here, plain giving tree. The poet's body is tired of open, open, open. The poet catch heat and recite psalms in the same name of self-defense. The poet been here, writing remembrance and tossing salt over each shoulder, crossing hands across the chest, just in case. The poet got to crack your jaw, shake loose the fracture like bacon bits, pray for understanding when the dust goes go. The poet was born a witness and been dodging bullets ever since word became bond. But bond ain't nothing but a steel bar promise for 3 squares and a cot. And every city with a homeless family is a landscape surviving on darkness and neck bones on silt and soot, on ballads in the tune of shotgun in the coat closet. The lugs ain't nothing but a metaphor for a eulogy. Eulogy is pretty talk people do to pretend they ain't try to kill you slowly in the first place. The truth has never been convenient. And the truth ain't nothing but a pound of dirt heavy on top of the poet's name. The pound is a closed fist salutation turned 180 degrees beneath the shadow of 8 planets. Call the wolves to the garden. You know, the starving love the smell of a wound opening. Hide the answers for our people's liberation in the smock at a barbershop, in the pocket of a politician, against a comet's tail, or on a beach full of crushed seashells. And watch and watch and watch how whiteness walks around trying to discover a new name for stolen. There's got to be a Bible verse about fool's eyesight. But if you search the history books, you can see the poet in the corner of a snapshot. Yes, if you search the history books, you can find the poet in the index. Oh, if you search the history books, you can locate the poet in the notes, each utterance of what it actually is and not what is being sold. Dripping, dripping, red, red like diamonds. Look closer. Can you see it? I built this dirt home just for you.
Wow. I can see all those little clapping hands going up there. I'm the only one that gets to applaud you.
Thank you.
Fantastic poem. In it, you say that a poet was born a witness, and that's really the way I see so much of your work. You know, among Mo's many books is one called Black Girl Magic that also is the title of an anthology, actually, that she did for Haymarket Books, the second Breakbeat Poets anthology. And I think that Black Girl Magic serves as a kind of a manifesto for Black women. Not to speak for them, but to say that, you know, for myself and my whiteness here, that, you know, to hear this voice just resonates so deeply. And I know it's going to be, have its impact at the Bowery Poetry Club. So proud that you're there.
Thank you. Thank you. Black Girl Magic, yeah, I love that you called it a manifesto. I always think of it as a reclamation of space,
Okay.
of not just of taking up space, but joy, right? Joy in who I am, and how that is not a commodifiable thing. I don't have to buy into my beauty. I can exist as is. And I mean, that's a revolutionary idea for a Black woman body in this time and age. I mean, for any woman body, sure, but like specifically, I'm speaking from my, you know, my point of view and what I see happening. A lot of times in these writing spaces and workshops, I was always challenged with like, well, why are you writing about Black women? Like, aren't you? And I thought that's really, I love the idea of just being, you know, this like free spirit, get to walk through the world. But when I walk through the world, I'm most certainly treated Blackness first, right? So I have no problem holding up and heralding and celebrating my Blackness, my Black womanness. And ever since that moment where someone said, you know, why can't you dissect it? Shout out to Kimberly Crenshaw for intersectionality, like giving us some articulation for what it means to be a Black woman. So I just think that everything that I do from here on out, I can name it, I can claim it. Every poem I write is a poem that a Black woman has written, you know, and I don't want to have to separate parts of myself for people to understand or care about me. I think that's where our humanity fails, is where we see atrocities happening and we don't call the thing. Like, this is oppression. This is what happens when you look this way, when you come from this place, when you're surrounded by these things. So it is now my job to constantly bear witness, to use these poems as a recording tool, and to speak the truth.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, you do. And so, how did this evolve? When did you write your first poem? Do you remember your first poem? What was that one?
Ooh, so all right. So I started in fourth grade writing. I knew I wanted to be a writer. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician during the week and a novelist on the weekend. And I lived with books. I used to steal books from the library. They told on me, but they never told me I couldn't come. They just like called my mom and said, okay, here she is again. So then they finally like gave me a little volunteer job. It was great, but no poems, right? Until I was 16. And that was my AP English class. And we had to rewrite a classic. And at that point, I think we were reading Dante's Inferno. And so I rewrote the Dante's Inferno classic using the lyrics of NWA. I thought, this is amazing. They're going to love this. I was told not only was it not accepted, but if I didn't do it over, I would get a 0. So that was like the end of my infatuation with poetry for about 5 years. And I didn't come back to poetry until I was 21. And my first poem I wrote after going to this little hole in the wall poetry venue on the border of Oakland and Berkeley called Dorsey's Locker. And that was it. I had been writing. I haven't stopped writing poems since the age 21, though I stopped performing them for a couple of years, say 23 to 24. I stopped performing them, but I haven't stopped writing them. Writing has been really my life's work, my lifeblood.
That's for sure. How many books you got published now?
Are we including
Yes,
chapbooks,
everything.
self-published?
Yes, everything. The anthologies.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess it would be up to like 16, 17 now. There's an anthology.
There you go.
18.
There you go.
Choice
And
Words just came out.
Say it again?
Choice Words anthology just came out.
Very
So I'm in that one with a poem called Pelican Sonnet. And it's just about writers writing about abortion and celebrating choice.
So many directions to go in these 16 books. But I'd like to go back to the Dorsey's Locker, and you in that little joint where some poets are standing up and reading. And I take it that you at 21, that's the first time you'd heard a poem in that kind of context. So now you know a lot of your work is at the microphone. You ran the New Eureka Poets Cafe Slam for years.
13
years. I was only there for 7 years.
Yes, I'm the longest running one.
You were the longest running one, but I was the first.
You made it possible for me. You did.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's opening doors is a good thing to be, and then you get out of the way. The New Eureka has been a prime spot for the Poetry Slam. But let's go back. I want to go back to to Dorsey's. You're hearing the poem, so it's coming in a different way than when you're reading Dante's Inferno.
Yes.
Are you seeing yourself up there reading the poem as well as the freedom to write the poem you want? I'm trying to get at that intersection of the verb to read when you read to yourself versus when you read to other people. Orality and text.
Yeah. I think because I am a child of the hip hop generation, I'm constantly seeing my words as a soundtrack. And so there is a rhythm to when I speak, there is a rhythm to when I write. I'm very, sonic about how these things sound, if I can make music with just the words. And when I was at Dorsey's Locker, I wasn't obviously able to articulate that yet because I was just enamored by it. I had never seen Black people my age on stage doing poems, never. I've seen rappers, I've seen singers, but I'd never seen a poet that looked like me and talked like me and that be considered poetry. Mind you, just 5 years prior, I was told my way of thinking was not a poem, right? And so here I am in a crowded bar, and it's like a big box, but in the middle of the box is this square bar with this big ass bell, operating bell. And if you did a poem well and the bartender appreciated the poem, they would ring the bell after you were done. And so everybody was we were performing for the audience, but you were also kind of performing for that bartender that's like so many poems up till then to like, yes, I grant you your wish. You did a good job. You were waiting for that. So to see like this energy, and I mean, some of it was frenetic, some of it was like, flowing, but a lot of it was like reflection. And a lot of it was this energy. I never seen it before. So it was even now thinking about it, it's palpable. You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking of the drinks, and I'm thinking of the people, especially now in this time of social distancing.
Oh yeah.
And I can smell the chicken wings, and I can
Oh yeah.
smell, like, people's smoke, because cigarette smoke was still allowed indoors.
Oh
Oh, it's so
dear.
wild. It's so wild. You still smell the dust from the drummer, because there's like a little bit of dust particles. It's wild. And the poetry became an animal in a sense, right? That I just wanted to live amongst it. And I didn't know that I could. And when I saw that young woman up on stage, I forgot her name, honestly. Well, when I saw her, I can still remember her face. She was light skinned with freckles and like red hair, like really a big bun. And she was doing this poem as if she was just talking to her girlfriends.
Yeah.
And then she got into a part where she just started rolling like a mom's Mabel. You know what I mean? And I had never seen conversation turn. I'd never seen it before. I'd never seen it before. So it felt like a spiritual, it felt like a welcoming, and it also felt like like smack talk. You know what I mean? Like it was like I don't know what other way to say it. Like you're in the barbershop, or you're in the hair salon, and that conversation that feels so seamless and open. It felt like that. And I wanted to do that, but I didn't have the chutzpah to. So I
Yeah.
just sat there like, okay, eyes shining. And my aunt dared me. Next week, let's do it. I said, no, thanks. And she's like, you do it, I'll do it. And I said, okay. And then I came back the next week, and I worked on this poem for
Tell me the
7 whole
bell rang.
days.
Tell me the bell rang.
The bell rang, and I got a standing ovation. Oh my goodness!
Oh,
So wild.
whoa.
This is a problem with, if you are competitive at all, if you have that like energy. I'm a softball player, so I have that energy of like, is the crowd gonna go wild? And when they went wild, listen, that was it. We go together. Like I follow poetry like, it was Charlie Brown. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is it.
that's it. You know what I mean, it still happens when people
Yeah.
hear poetry for the
Yeah.
first time, really read by the people who experience it. This is why the slam at the Eureka, when it started, just, you could either go to the universities and study multiculti, or you could go down to the cafe on a Friday night and hear the people who lived it speak in their own voices. And in this days, when everything is committeeized and has to go for the stamps of approval from different, to just have your own go-to as a poet, and that's, and you certainly took that from Dorsey's. A lot of people take that from the Bowery Poetry Club.
They do.
Sarah Kay's name is underneath that bar, even though the bar looks different. It's the same old bar that's in there. And a lot of people have come through the Bowery with that intent, where the poems are spoken and then given away freely in the air.
What I love about performance poetry, I was introduced to slam via New Eurekan. And I fell in and out of love with it, because the politics are still politics, right? You have to learn. One doesn't remove itself or become more honorable because it is art. There are still politics involved. But what I appreciated about performance poetry forever is that I was able to go to Cave Canem and figure out how to make these words on stage live on the page with the same intensity. Because I thought this is where my disconnect is happening. Every time I read the poems, I hate them. Like, what? This is not what I remembered when I saw it on stage. What is happening? And a lot of it has to do with there being all of these rules and these traditions, but the reality is poets create the tradition. So I then came to Cave Canem and learned, okay, I can write poems in the margin. I can write poems in the footnote. I can make a poem, like I'm learning all these ways to do that and still keep my authentic voice.
Absolutely.
Because when I write, I am not writing just for the masses. I'm writing for a specific I'm writing for a specific person to understand me, right? Because which is me.
Right.
I'm writing for my younger me to see myself and decide I get to be here too, right? I
Right.
don't have to play in the shadows. I
Mm.
don't have to pretend that, these things don't hurt my feelings. I don't have to,
Yeah.
be stronger. You get to be whole and actualized little Mahogany, right? And that's how these poems, I wanted them to translate on page. And I want to make sure that whether I'm there or not, you're able to read it and you understand it. Sure, it may not be universal language, but it is universal, I think, tone. You know what I
Mm.
mean? I
Oh
think
yeah.
that.
Well, listen, you're direct. You're direct. That's for sure. And you're always reading to that younger self, which I think is a good place to start. You know,
Mm,
when you say what you like about performance poetry, though, I shudder because to me, it ain't performance poetry. It is poetry. I
mhm,
get what you're saying about that many of the poets you hear as they're reading in these places, the poems don't work on a page. But to me, if they work on the page, if they
mhm.
don't work on the page, they really don't work in performance either. It's like
I agree.
blowing hot air. The problem is that people's ears aren't tuned up enough. You know,
Mm,
and don't forget that poets were talking poems for tens of
first,
thousands of years before
absolutely.
writing was invented. So
Hmm.
it's always seemed to me that the newcomers should be called text poets. If you want to distinguish between those who used orality in their work versus, and there are fewer and fewer of these people that are just, say, writing for the, it's a really an integrated world now with the page and the stage and all that
Yeah.
baloney. So, but
Wait,
if
let's
they're the
hold on
text
for that.
poets,
I like that expansiveness that you just did, because I say performance poetry instead of spoken word, because I believe words are all spoken. And I also
ah,
believe when people say, oh, you're a spoken word artist, I think that that is a divisive measure for if I have studied the craft of poetry. I believe poems are poems. When someone says, oh, you're a slam poet, I haven't slammed since 2006. You know what I mean? Like 2007. No, I'm not I'm not a slam poet. And they're like, oh, this poem is a slam poem. No, it's a poem that happens in slam. Slam is a vehicle. Slam is a stage. But I do understand that is how I try to delineate between performance poetry, which is when I get up on stage and say the poem. But I love that idea of coming back to it, turning it on its head. Text poem.
text poets are there, but you
Teacher.
you studied at Pratt. Now you teach over there sometimes. I studied at Columbia. I've taught there and at NYU and the Bard and places. Um, the world of the academy is opening up to how poetry can be performed, and certainly the audience is there. It's kept a good secret by us poets, but there's a tremendous audience out there for the new poetry, which I think is what you're tapping into for
Mm.
the Bowery Poetry Club, and why I'm so happy to welcome you in there. What are some of your ideas for that place?
I'm excited to try. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm really excited to see where she takes me too. I'm excited to see where I go too. So within my time there, we started a couple of things. I wanted to make sure programming was free to the audience, especially during the pandemic. The last thing you want to ask people to do is pay for the art that will sustain them when there are all these organizations that will benefit from the audience, right? Like you benefit from us bringing together these amazing minded, performative, and academic, all of us in the world of poetry coming into this space. So if you want to be a part of that gathering, then you can help fund us. And so that's why No Desk Poetry Concert Series started within the second week of us being on lockdown, right? John Paul Davis sent an email as I was penning an email saying, like, I just want to do a marathon reading. And I said, oh, well, I'm putting one together. Like, we should just collab. And we did that for 2 weeks. But of course, I think we both kind of thought, this will be over in three weeks. It's going to be fine. Lo and behold, this week is our 10th week of No Desk Poetry series. Every Sunday, we 4 to 5:30 online. Again, free, and we've had, you know, the most amazing readers, not only the people we study, but the people who are changing the game on stages and in classrooms. I try to make sure I mix it up a lot. And there's also free writing workshops or low cost workshops. We had our first ekphrastic poetry contest. I'm just trying to make sure that I keep Bowery as a social literary hub, you know, specifically for marginalized voices in a city that is so large, it's easy to feel like you're swallowed whole. And of course, making it become a virtual thing has been interesting because now our world, you know, it's larger than just Lower Manhattan, or who can afford to tour New York City. Now we really get to tap into all of our relationships and say, hey, I know you're in England. I know you're in South Africa. We had a poet from Australia, Greece. I know you're far away, but could you share 2 poems? And just what that could do, how that could like shake, as Anis Mojani, Bowery Great would say, shake the dust, you know, shake the dust that has begun to settle when we think about, you know, art and literacy and literature. So I'm excited to make sure that we become a hub of communal engagement, literary achievement, and performance excellence. But
Yo,
also, I'm really here for the equity, right? Like, we need to make sure it's equitable for our artists. You get to be an artist. We get to take care of you. Because look, now we're doing all of this free pro, and where are people going? You know, art is saving us. It is saving us. It is restoring our faith. It is restoring our sense of self. It is restoring our sense of community. It is saving us from like this desperate isolation that the pandemic has, you know,
you keep
required.
talking like this, you're going to pull me out of my depression. I don't know.
Good.
I don't know what.
Come to the light.
what to say to that, you know, except I remember what it was. It was like you were talking about joy there as one of the elements when you were sitting there listening to a poet read her poems for the first time, you know. And sometimes you quote Lucille Clifton on joy, I believe. You know, what did she have to say? Do you remember?
Come celebrate with me today. Something has tried to kill me and has failed.
Well, I think that's something we can walk around with now.
Yeah, put that on a little piece of paper, put it in your pocket, put it in your wallet.
Yeah.
Hard day, pull it on out. Like and I mean, she's not just talking about the large death, right? The luminous ones, the ones like the car, and she's talking about the small ones, the ones that take the wind out of our sails, the ones that make us forget that we are not alone.
Yeah. So what does all this have to do with Twitter anyway? You know, as I was saying, I was thinking that the only person I know who published a book of poems that were actual tweets is you. How does one move into the digital age and what is the difference between a tweet and a poem anyway?
I don't think there's a difference between a tweet and a poem per se. Well, for me, it wasn't. I turned to Twitter, I think it was 2008 or 9, where I came up with the idea to publish the tweets. AJ Stabe, he's the visual director, and he put the entire book together for me. So like illustrator, art director, visual director, all of it. Because he was following me on Twitter, and every day I would spend like 20 minutes. That would be my writing space, because at that point I had been spoiled by these Cave Canem workshops, and I had, I think I experienced the Poetry House. Poets House had their Emerging Poets Fellowship. I been inundated with amazing literacy, like facilitators and poets and teachers, and then you leave it and you're like still hungry for it. You're the sponge for like, how do I look at a poem differently? And I don't want to just write for an hour a day. That's I feel like I'm sick by just my handwriting and my journaling and my, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are doing the artist's life. You have all these different ways of trying to tap into the creative soul. So I turned to Twitter and I decided 20 minutes here, that too will be poetry. And first it was just letters. Dear Twitter, all hair is good hair. Dear Twitter, however, all weave is not good weave. And so then it was like, I started playing with, 140 characters, how succinct I can be in telling this poem, or this story or this moment, and it turned into a book. Yeah. So it was very fun. It was very fun. And it gave me a lot of light, because at that point, Twitter felt a little, it feels dismal now, You have to make sure you follow a really good thread of people. Otherwise, you go into the rabbit hole of sadness, I believe.
Well, the book is called hashtag Dear Twitter. It came out in 2010 from Penmanship Books. And I know we haven't talked enough about the variety of things that you do as a poet. Poet is activist. And Penmanship Books, though, has published a lot of beautiful books. And that's, as I understand it, is all Mahogany Browne.
Yeah.
So what what plans do you see for Penmanship Books? Do you think it's going to be able to continue now that you're at the Bowery Poetry Club? You are the what are you at Urban Word? What's your title?
Artistic director.
Artistic director at Urban Word.
And the poetry coordinator at St. Francis College.
St. Francis College. Okay.
Right. But St. Francis College is low residency. Artistic director is, it's just about giving some vision on what the artistic goal is for the year, and of course ED with you. But Penmanship has been basically out of print. I only print 2 titles a year, which is the Youth Poet Laureate of New York and the anthology for the National Youth Poet Laureate series. I stopped a very long time ago. It takes a lot. It takes a lot, and it was erected from an idea of I couldn't, no one wanted to publish me. I was touring through Europe at that time. I think I was on my 2nd year of touring there, and someone asked for my book, and I said, oh, I pulled out my chapbook. I have these beautiful things I just made. And they said, no, we need something for the library. Do you have anything with the ISBN? I said, okay, I'm on it. I'll get back to you. And I came back to the States, and I shopped my manuscript in no bites. And then, someone responded like, oh, I'm not sure you have a following for, we're not sure you have the right following for us, or something like that. And I was like, blown away, because I had just performed at, I think it was, which theater was that? Oh, man. Oh, I just know it had 2,000 seats in London. It was in the UK, and it had 2,000 seats. Okay. And I was just like, I just shared poems with 2,000 people over a weekend, like, 2-3 shows. I definitely have an audience. You know what I mean? I definitely have an audience. So
yes.
My response to all of the no's was, I will create my own. Shout out to Jessica Care Moore. I will create my own. I'll create my own. And what I also do, because I believe, like I said, I'm all about, everyone deserves a shot. I then made publishing available to other performing artists that were on tour that I saw that needed, something professionally made. I offered publishing services to them.
Yeah.
And so we, Penmanship Books was a press. It was a small home for chapbooks from Donna Smith to Asha Monet to Amir Suleiman to Jahaz Zanabu, Dasha Kelly, the current poet laureate of Milwaukee, Carvins Lestant, from
we're looking forward to all these
Hamilton fame.
Yes, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on. And then I just had to say, I'm gonna stop. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna take a beat, take a breath, because I wanted to be an artist too, and you could really you can lose yourself.
That's why we started with the whole thing off with a poem, because we got to base it in that. Just to say that it's, that Walt Whitman did the same damn thing, when he first published Leaves of Grass at the newspaper he was working at there, the Brooklyn Eagle. Mm-hmm. And guess who he got to review it?
Who?
himself. He got a rave, believe it or
Wow.
not. I don't know if
Great
any of
review
your
for
poets have
yourself.
figured that
I'm
next step
here.
out. You
A
got
little
to figure that one
self-love
out.
Sunday.
So you're writing for kids now. Now,
I am.
you know, I saw your daughter work behind you once. She was singing. Just oh my goodness, happens to be here. Woke, a young poet's call to justice, and then of course
Word.
there's Woke Baby that has even
There is hope,
spawned
baby.
its own book fair, ladies and gentlemen. You know, if you got kids, get woke. How did you start? What happened to say, I'm going to speak to those kids, even younger than the Mahogany that I was when I started this thing?
Right. I don't think I had a clue of how to do that, right? So Black Girl Magic, I did that Black Girl Magic poem for PBS's Brief But Spectacular series, and it went viral, and I thought, oh, cool. Maybe I'll do a coffee table book for friends, you know? And I wanted to be really beautiful and hardcover, and I learned I couldn't afford the hardcover, so we did something beautiful. It was several colors, but not hardcover. However, in the time that it took for me to use the remainder of my I had a school loan, and I was like, well, I have the school loan left. I'll just pay these artists to do, you know, to do the book. Shout out to Jess X Shin, who did a beautiful illustration. So I did it, and before I could put it out, I did this performance at Girls Right Now, which is another amazing community engagement for, I think, youth mentoring for young girls. And I didn't realize how many publishing editors and journalists, I didn't know how many people were there of that industry. So when I did the poem, I did several, including the one that you're talking about with me and my daughter. My editor was there, my future editor was there, and she said, I'd love to talk to you about, you know, what this could be, like if you're interested in writing books and like YA novels. And I'm just kind of used to people promising me things. So I was like, yeah, sure. Just let's go to lunch next year, because it was December. And she's like, okay. And she gave me a date, and I thought, okay. And that's Kate Jacobs. She's amazing, from Roaring Brooks Press, a Macmillan imprint. And so I didn't think anything of it, because I literally got like 4 email invites from other publishers, and you know, a lot of it just falls through. But then I reached out to my friend Jason Reynolds, and I said, hey, this woman keeps emailing me to go to lunch. Like, what do you think this means? And he said, well, you know, tell me where she's from, and I can tell you, you know, just a little bit about what to expect about, you know, if this is legit, so to speak. And I told him where, and he's like, oh no, that's big. And I was like, oh no, I just totally like brushed her off, and I thought she was like lying, and I'm so sorry. He's like, no, it's okay. Just like chill out, you know, it'll be fine. But go in there with an idea for what you want to actually do. Because this can be big for you, Mo. And yeah, I went in and had that conversation 3-4 weeks later. And she said, I really love the story that you did with your daughter, the singing one about colorism and, you know, growing up girl and friendship loss. And she said, is that a novel yet? Like, are you working on that? And I said, yeah, I was not. So I'm sorry, Kate, I lied. I wasn't ready. I didn't have it done. It was just like a whole bunch of poems. It wasn't fully fleshed out yet. And then I fleshed it out, and then because it's my life, I had to start, like, I was like going back looking for, like, there's a lot of fractures that happen in your youth. So going, I was like, what happened to this person? I started looking up people, and I had to just like rewrite the whole thing, because the person I was writing about had a really traumatic life thereafter. You know what I mean? And I was like, do I want to put it out there how much they hurt me, though it is true, and I know now that they have suffered so much more loss. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that kind of person that just, you know, danced on top of someone's demise.
Yeah.
So I had to go back and really root it in the feeling of inadequacy, and rooted in the pain of losing a friend, but also like build another world so that I wasn't gleaning so much from someone that I once knew and loved.
What an amazing story of how a writer comes to do the writing, where you start with, where the impulse is, where the empathy for the people that you're seeing, describing, inventing, and people that you invent, having empathy for them, and then sprinkle it all with some of that joy that you keep talking about. That's a beautiful story. I know that my granddaughter Ramona loves Woke Baby. Everybody loves Woke. It's a board book
Yay.
for
Yes.
for little kids,
Mhm.
and it really it speaks across races, if I may say that. You know, it seems to be truly a
Yep.
universal kind of. You know, you remind me of Maya Angelou, who was such a great force here in New York and St. Louis and all across, you know, an inaugural poet, you know, for
Yeah.
Clinton, and whose book I know I know for whom the cage bird sings. I can't think of.
I know why the cage bird sing.
I know
Mhm.
why the cage birds sing. That
Mhm.
reminds me of Black Girl Magic. I think
Oh,
you
wow.
answer the question of I know why the cage bird sings with that poem.
Wow.
Who are some of the people in your lineage then?
Oh, I definitely write about that in the woke introduction. So this, it's a kids anthology of poems. It's really age 8 to 12 is who we're writing to. And I'm just going to read from that. The concept of being woke has always been a compass for community leaders and members. Light bearers, including Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, June Jordan, Shadi Braga, Sonia Sanchez, Nina Simone, have used poetry, plays, and essays to challenge people to be woke. Also, I cite DJ, neo soul singer, and poet Erykah Badu because she's the one that I remember saying, "I stay woke" on refrain.
Mm,
Right? It was the loop. It was the loop, and and then this song that happens in between, this mantra, this seance that happens in between. So those are light bearers for me. I return to Audre Lorde's work, especially when I'm fearful. I'm turning to now different folks for like inspiration on writing for young people. I didn't know that I could do it, and that meeting with my editor Kate, I then realized, okay, I guess I can, sure. So Woke Baby was the first of its kind for me, and while I wanted to make sure we are raising, this is for all babies, it has a little black boy on the
right.
cover, um, and to see all the people that aren't aren't shook from that, they're like, yes, this baby is a baby, like this is what we hold up. So I was very sad when Woke Baby, uh, I guess it's listed as like a no-fly list for the red wave, which is like, you know, Trump heavy supporters. They said that Woke Baby raises liberal kids and should be banned. And it has really mean reviews on Amazon for brainwashing children. Um,
Oh, I had no
because
idea.
I talk about breaking glass ceilings in
Yeah.
in the book, and and you get to yell whenever you want, and you have the right to speak up as a baby, and when you put your hands up in the air, that means you want justice, and they're like, oh no,
Oh,
absolutely
dear.
not, this
No.
is horrible, so please go to Amazon and review it.
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's
That's
an action item for this 60 something participants. Please, 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 please. But yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you bring the light to spaces, though. You know what I mean? Like, it's nothing but the truth. And here I am, like, celebrating all the many ways in which, babe, we don't even think like, oh, this is you in your moment standing up for yourself. No, I don't want that bottle. Yes, change me now. Like, this is you speaking up and
oh my
taking up
God.
space. What
Baby liberation.
amazing.
What's going to happen here? You know.
Right. And so woke, a young poet's call, is the older sibling of Woke Baby. The idea that this poem turned into an illustrated board book could cause so much friction. I thought, well, then I might as well go really into the fire. So what does it mean to have our young people be prepared to be global citizens, And if we had talked to um, 45 when he was 9 years old about humanity, maybe he would be a different person today. So I'm taking charge, and we're talking about empathy and intersectionality, and we're talking about pronouns and gender and restorative justice and community activism and volunteering and all of it. Yeah.
Well, that's sort of sounds like a recipe for all of us who are locked down right now, wondering how to get out there. You just gave us a little recipe there. Any words you can add to how to bake that recipe, how to let it grow or something?
I mean, it depends on what your healing work looks like. Sometimes it's just reading a book. Sometimes, I mean, if you can turn away from this, because this has become a tube as well, right? This is pretty invasive, these Zoom conversations. I have more Zoom meetings than I had real meetings when we were out in the world, which is wild. I'm like, why do you want to see me? I'm sleepy. Like, what? I don't know what I look like today. I'm tired of everything, right? What are they calling it? Pandemic fatigue? I'm that. But I think reading has really brought me joy. I began because I contracted the coronavirus and I was sick for 6 weeks, down for 2 completely, and then had to like work my way back within the next 4. But once I got my head back, the fog had kind of lifted, I took to reading 1 book of YA a day, 1 book a day. Because YA is very easy for me, and it may not be for anyone else, but like if you find a book that you can fall into and breeze through, and that can be like a deep breath, it really feels like, to me, it felt like I can move myself for 1 minute, and I just got to go back to that childhood. I got to remember what it was like riding a bike. Like it takes you there to this moment of not just necessarily innocence, but more like this weightlessness, this weightlessness of this is the moment, and this moment will pass, and I just have to keep my brain strong. And so the YA is doing that for me.
It's wild that you would mention that, Mo, because believe it or not, yesterday I started reading a YA novel myself. Maybe we can admit a trend or start one. Now somebody's got to help me out. This is a book about Martha's Vineyard back in the day when it had a very large deaf population, and it's a book written by a deaf woman who's and it's about signing and how the signing developed out of the signing that was occurring in Martha's Vineyard, because many people there back in the early 1900s were signing to each other, whether they were deaf or not. Anyway, somebody out there in the audience must know the title of that book. Write it down there. Otherwise, I'll have to get back to you later. So listen, Mo, I think that we've had enough at this, and we better get this audience, give them some room to grill you a little. That's it. Show me a sign. I knew somebody out there would get it. And Claire was out. It's a beautiful book. Thank you, JC.
I'm going to check it out.
You got to check it out. Okay, so JC, you got anybody with a question out there, or should we just continue to ramble or read poems for y'all? What's next?
I mean, all of that sounds actually great, and I wish we could do all 3. I do have some questions here. First, thank you. I want to echo what Bob said probably like 20 or 30 minutes ago, that if you keep talking like this, you will lift me out of my depression. This is invigorating, and I'm so psyched right now.
We got you.
All right. So we have a question from Eduardo first. Eduardo, I'm going to, let's see, hang on. Eduardo has a different username. I'm going to unmute you now, Eduardo.
Hi, miss you guys.
Hi.
Eduardo Pulgar. Venezuelan, how are you?
That's the baby that sent me to Versailles.
Oh my God, you won?
Yep. Oh God, you won. Delicious. Thank you for taking care of me. How are you?
Girl, I'm good. I'm in Miami right now too. I'm gonna be back in New York.
I'm so jealous.
No, you're not. It's very weird. It's like midsummer. It's like very sunny, but no one's on the street.
Oh my.
Very creepy. But you guys are so gorgeous. Like I remember being in that email and you guys were talking about like doing this, and I think it's really cool that you guys ended up interviewing each other. And something I've been thinking a lot about in this pandemic, because you know that I also work as a journalist, I've been playing with like mixing mediums and practices. Like I've been like
Yeah.
playing instruments and like painting and doing different things with my poetry that I've never done before. So I was wondering if you guys could speak a little more to hybridity, especially because I know Bob used to run like a label and has done everything, and I know that you also do young adult books. So if you could speak a little more to like poets doing hybrid work,
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be
Thank you.
cool.
That's a beautiful question. I love being a poet and coming into this YA world, this children's lit world, because I just feel like everything that I write is from that foundation, and I can flesh it out, or I can have an economy of language, and I can still um, get out the energy that I want. I can still tell the story in the way that I feel is most important, but it's because of poetry, I'm certain, that I'm able to do that. So the first YA novel that I have coming out, it's a novel in verse. It comes out January 21 with Crown Books. It's called Chlorine Sky. And it was pretty intense because when I first turned it in and I'm like, all right, done, bye bye, great. I was in Miami and I was like, all right, so now I'm working on YA number 2. And I'm in the zone for YA number 2, and I'm writing these blocks, these justified blocks instead of this long verse. And I said, can I see the galley of what I sent you, just so I can I just needed to make sure in my head that I was making an equal measure, I think, in just changing. And when I read the galley, I was like, oh no, this is horrible. I'm like, this is horrible. This is not what I want in the world. Stop press right now, immediately. Like, this cannot happen. And they're like, Mahogany, it's fine. I was like, no, I don't feel good about this. And that's when I realized all of the tricks that we do as poets don't always translate in the other genre, right? So you have to be very careful about doing that extra legwork, So that's fine. I don't mind. I love economy of language, but I also have to make sure that there's a foundation, there's some grounding. So when you're reading it, it's not lost in the sauce and just becomes this arbitrary, euphoric poem. When I'm talking about a thing, I want you to walk away with a thing. So, and I blame that on me as the writer for not being, really aware. And also, I think reading off the screen for me just isn't that's not my love language. I have to have it in my hands. I told you I stole books from libraries. Now I'm here all the time. If you see these books I have, I'm a mess. But I love being able to dance and swim amongst all the genres. So when someone asks me, oh, so this I'm working on also a book of essays for Haymarket, and it's about mass incarceration and the effects on women and children. And there is a lot of lyric in the essays, but I'm very clear that it's an essay. So I'm trying to bring the thing that I love and also, acknowledge the space that I'm in. Even if I'm breaking the tradition a little, as long as you know where you're going, like, all right, this is a space that you're used to. This is how I'm going to break that form open. I think anything's possible.
Anything is possible, and it's a tradition in New York, Eddie. That the painters and the poets work together. It's the New York school, which got its name as a sort of a satire on the New York expressionists. Frank O'Hara and that. But working with poets theater, and as you say, when you're a poet, it's very rare. As a matter of fact, I think there's only, on one hand, the poets who can make a living in this country by writing poems, and even they usually teach. But what you can do is everything you want to do.
Right.
You can start a publishing company, if you want. And I started a record label there with Sekou Sundiata and Bill Adler, Mouth Almighty Records, and we did. I work a lot with the television. I'm involved very much with endangered languages, which is where a lot of roots of this orality we've been talking about are. So you can still find it alive in the small languages around the world that are, the crisis of losing these languages is to lose whole systems of consciousness. Don't get me started. So anyway, hybridity is the name of the game, and the ekphrastic is just art inspired by other art, as Fong can tell you. And that we had at the Bowery. Now, they wouldn't consider that something to come out of a place like there's a bar where you're going to do poetry slams. But yes, it's all there and interwoven, and the more you can do it, the better off we all are, right? And
Yeah.
get out of your houses, touch the earth.
Right, boundless.
That's what Joy Harjo says.
Mm-hmm. Way to bring in the laureate. Come on.
Yeah, I gotta do that, Joy.
I love it.
You.
I love that you are like a walking historian. You are living well, and you are living literary archive. So thank you for being that, sharing that with us.
I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen next. JC, what is going to happen next?
Well, what's going to happen next? We've got a bunch more questions. Next, Fong Bui is going to speak from Greenpoint. PB, you want me to I'll unmute you. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mahogany. What a lively conversation about all the things that we love, So I have one question. You spoke of your desire to read for others as much as your younger self, you put it that way, the imaginary self, one would say. It reminded me, our last conversation last Wednesday when Jashi Alapur hosted our May guest critic, Daisy Demosier, along with her two friends, artist friends, Jesse Chun and Azael Sadiq. They spoke of, in reference to the great poet and philosopher from the Martinique, Edouard Glissant, insisting on the idea of clamor for the right to opacity. Everyone would serve as a kind of a resolute ethical stance against empirical conquest and domination, among all of that disastrous thing. So I remember reading your amazing essay, Dismantling Rage, on Audre Lorde's Sister Outsider. It's about Black lesbian mother warrior poet. I mean, this is how we love and admire her so much. So I just wanted to ask if you can share a little bit how you discover her and what she meant for you, and when was that?
Yeah, I discovered Audre Lorde's work, I would say I discovered Sister Outside of the Collection in my like 30s, right? Late 20s, early 30s. But when I really dived in, it was 2013, 2012. I just started researching everything I could find on her. And I had that same kind of obsession with Black women writers. I did that with all of Maya Angelou's work. All of her memoirs were split up, and I made it my business to find every single one. I even got one from England because I was like, we don't have this. I need to buy, you know what I mean? So I obsessed and I read about their entire life. Her, June Jordan, Jane Cortez, Zanya Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, Toni Cade Mombara, and then I came to Audre Lorde because I knew of the poem Power. I knew of a couple of the pieces, but the Sister Outsider collection was the moment, I think, where I finally was able to articulate the rage that I had been holding. Pearl Cleage had this beautiful essay on matted miles, and as a survivor, my mother is a survivor of domestic violence, and I had to watch that, right? I had to learn from her and my father's relationship, how to be, how to receive love, what kind of love I was deserving of. And then of course I had to like foster the anger that sat there even still. And so reading about this rage and not having it really articulated until I read Sister Outsider blew my mind. And it just like opened the doors. It showed me the anger that I had towards the supremacy that was actually teaching me in these grad school programs, because that's supremacy too. Like when someone can tell you that your poem isn't a poem because you said collard greens, right? I was witnessing these like random acts of racist vitriol under the guise of professionalism and education. And it was Audrey that gave me this toolkit to really start unpacking it. And not feeling like I was alone or like I was wilding. I'm not wilding. I'm not overbearing because I can say this is what I see. And then of course she taught me to start teaching in a way that required me being a student too, which was really different from how I was brought up. I was brought up that teachers are always right. You know, the student should only listen. So yeah, that's what Audrey means to me specifically, and just breaking my ideas open, like how archaic of an idea that there is only one way to learn, and there's only one way to hold rage in your body. And she also, in the cancer journals, that was really the light switch for what anger can do to my body. You know what I mean? So like how am I going to use it? Like, don't hold it in here, get it out. Like, how am I going to use it to change something, to make sure my daughter is free? Because the liberation has to come internally as well. Like, we need to know what we're fighting for so that we can fight for everyone, not just this one moment of happiness or, you know, whatever we think it. This moment is only a time, and it's already passed. So now what? Well, you know, to sit here and talk to you and look up on my screen and like to see this brother be murdered from the police right now, yesterday over I think they said, they don't know, but it's another, you know, I can't breathe moment, but it's happening 24 hours ago. And yet we say free, you know, and yet we say liberation. So what does it mean to still require and demand those things, and to also find a place to keep yourself awake and safe?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love one of the master's tool will never dismantle
the master's house.
It's so
That's one.
powerful. So
yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. I think my favorite is still your silence will not protect you. I feel like we are working. That is every day. We are working towards that every single day. Yeah. And every day we have to get up and start again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to have my Cables of Rage signed by her.
Yeah.
My library.
Oh, you showing off. Let me visit your library.
I'd like to just fill in a few of those names that Mahogany mentioned. Pearl Cleage, Cleage. Right. From, I believe she's from Atlanta. She's in the United States of Poetry. And her book about Miles was something, it really is an amazing book. She also is a playwright and had a play that was going to open here in New York when the COVID hit, you know, so got that. And June Jordan was, of course, writing right there near where you were going to your first reading at Darcy's Locker there.
That's right.
And a lot of her students in that revolutionary poetry course at Berkeley were hanging out around it. I bet they were there that night. So yeah, it's a wonderful story.
Thank you. Those are my pillars.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob, for that question. Thank you, Mahogany, for that excellent answer.
I'm going to be more succinct now, JC. I'm sorry.
No, please. This is your time. Our next question.
Peter Molnar
yes.
is there from Budapest. You know,
yes.
That might be the dog.
And Peter actually has the next question.
Oh, great! And I do want to mention that I'm sitting in front of the Sam Jablon poet sculpture. People keep asking me, what is that thing? Well, it's just a stack of poets. That's all it is, that can pack up and go to readings, and then the poets unpack it and stand on it and create podiums. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Sam is in here right now.
Oh, good.
Peter, you should be unmuted. So if you wanna
Peter
chat.
Molnar is the slam champion of Europe, Mahogany Browne.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Bob, for inviting me for this. It would have pulled me out of depression if I was in depression, but I was not, because I know you. Because Bob was here 1.5 years ago at a big European slam poetry gathering, which was actually cross-Atlantic, American, European. So thank you, and it's so nice to hear you, Mahogany, as well, and also meet the others. And so my question or sort of proposal that whether we could think about doing a New York, Budapest, or New York slam poetry event. And when I say New York, I mean the Central European New York, which is Budapest. And in my, at least in my imagination, because there are people like there is the 8th district in Budapest. I don't want to be long, but and the Roma Macedonian friend once said that she was looking for a flat and asked someone that, shall I take a flat in the 8th district? And then the person said, no, don't go there. Jews, gypsies, blacks, migrants, they are all there, don't go. So, and then of course I told a friend, go there, that's a good place. That's one of the most exciting places in a city. Anyway, so the question and proposal is, can we do such an event? And I raise it especially because actually that's how I started slam poetry. Almost exactly 10 years ago, I was in New York and I arranged the New York Budapest Slam Poetry Night. In New York, I was in the Living Theater on Clinton Street, and in a club in Budapest, there were Hungarian slammer friends, and we switched the stage slam by slam. And I thought it would be really nice, and the topic could be something similar, like something, the way I would call it, turning prejudice to love, not only to tolerance. I have a bigger dream, not only to say that, okay, I tolerate that you are here. No, it's about inspiring each other to be happy that the person who seemingly different is there too.
Well, we're for sure going to do that, Peter. You know, absolutely. Mahogany, you just got to put it into action.
Yeah, so Peter, what it sounds like is Bob is going to do this for you. Next question.
Thank you, Peter. Good to see you, man.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, our next question comes from L. L, if you're still there, let me see if I can find you. Oh, it looks like L had to leave. I can read their question.
Oh no, I see them, JC.
Are they in there?
Yeah. Here, I'll ask to unmute. The waving is amazing.
I'm here.
Hi.
Hello. I love the head wrap.
Thank you.
Okay, my question. I'm 18 years business corporate, transitioning back to my creative self.
Welcome home.
Thank you. I always wrote songs as a kid. I always wrote poems, you know, and I'm getting back to that. I actually just wrote a poem to Popeye's chicken. I love the biscuits. I just wrote a poem about it. It's like, it was amazing. I was like, wow, did I just do that? Okay, I can do this.
Is that good?
Love. All right. So my question to you is, you know, I'm using your words, right? Black girl magic, the joy of who I am, toolkit to start unpacking. How am I going to use it so my daughter can be free? I am a child of a previous crack addicted mom. So that's one thing. I was parentified as a child. I took on adult roles at 5 years old. So I didn't have much of a childhood. It was always taking care of my younger brother and sister at 5. What are we gonna eat? How are we gonna, get dressed? How are we gonna wash? How are we gonna clean the house when mom she's unconscious?
Right.
So I actually just found out that word like a few months ago, parentify. I'm like, oh my God, that's me.
The whole time, yep. Yeah.
I'm like, that's me. That's like a word.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to, I have a picture of myself when I was 5, and I just, look like, oh my God, so much you had to take on. And so I want to take all this stuck energy and put it, through that vehicle. It's coming up. The more I relax, I'm completely away from my family. I can't. I cannot take another generation of drug addicts and drug dealers and alcoholics, and I just can't. I had 2 daughters, and I had to run. Like,
Yes.
I had to escape. Like, this is not normal. So I have a lot of experiences, and I have a lot of books, and all I know is God is like, tell your story, tell your story. And I'm like, how? Like, where do I start? Like, it's so much. Like, just your brother go to jail and going to jailhouses and having to get bail money. And you just take on all these toxic responsibilities of, enabling people and enabling addicts. And I can go on, but I don't want to take up too much time here. Like,
So where to start?
Yeah, oh my God, yes.
Yeah. I say start with the picture. You write a poem a day, and the poem can be as long or as short as you need that responds to the picture. And when you find that, okay, I've said all that I can say about this picture, you find another picture. I thought my mother is also a surviving crack addict, and I went through that same kind of role at the age of 16, and didn't really have, the things that were, the dream, like the prom and all. That wasn't really what it was happening. I was like fighting drug dealers and getting them out of my house and going to find cars, and not things you should really ever know about, right? So I wrote about it, and I didn't think anything of it, except it kept coming back into my poems when I was not writing about her, right? And so I then just turned to it. And I think it might have been Terrence Hayes who was just like, you have to write this story, like just finish it. Otherwise you will never like complete the story, and you'll always return to this image or this moment of your mother in new poems, right? And she's a whole new person now, and as am I, but like, what does it mean to finally, like, let that part of you heal? And it means you just have to keep telling every single part of the story that you can. And there might be days like day 10, you might get tired and say, I want to, write about Popeye's chicken again. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying your mindset, your reboot. I'm sorry, biscuit. That's because the biscuit and the honey, amen. But like the reboot happens for emotionally you to be like aware and ready to write about something else. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now I'm free enough to write about something else. And maybe you go back to this collection of family poems and you edit, or maybe you don't, maybe you just get them out your system. But what's happening, it sounds like, which also happened to me, is it is blocking my vision of what else is out there.
Yes.
So write it out. You got to write it out. You got to write it off. And
write it off. I like that. Write it off. And it's so interesting. Yes. I'm new to this scene. I don't know how I connected here, but it's interesting to see you and how you started. And I have my Black Girl Magic
Yes, earrings.
Earring.
It's a
And,
movement. It's a movement. Look, Ntozake Shange said in 1972, where there is women, there is magic. And that is it. Like, she is the cornerstone for this whole movement as far as I'm concerned. So I'm very excited to just see it live and thrive. And you are the epitome of it. So keep on, keep writing.
Thank you. Because it's so, like I said, it's so funny. I came to you because I was listening to Jay-Z earlier. And I'm just like, it's a hard knock life for us. It's a hard knock life. I'm like, this is me.
Wow.
Steady kisses, we get kicks. You understand? And it's like, if I can just start there, like, wow, it's a hard knock life for us. You know, I'm standing on the corner counting, right? You know, taking what I see between my eyes, writing down life ills. You know what I mean? Like, wow, that's what I have to do. Like, and who knows what it can turn into.
That's right.
But, you know, here we are.
Yep. I can't wait to see what's next.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elle, for sharing. I'm so glad you found this conversation today, by chance as it was. We have like a couple more questions, but I think maybe that's a beautiful note to move to the last poem on, Mahogany.
Okay. I'm going to turn to the youth book, Woke, A Young Poet's Call for Justice. And I had the honor to write this with Elizabeth Acevedo, Olivia Gatwood, forward by Jason Reynolds. And each poem is illustrated by Theodore Taylor III, who is amazing. I'll read Right 2 after Claude McKay. If we must live, let it not be in silence. Each shadow surrounding our right to be outraged, let us not sit hands crossed while our stomachs growl upset, full of bad food and assembly line ideas. Listen closely. Our bodies bubbling up angrily at the lies we have been fed. If we must live, let no one decide how our hearts beat, or how our songs should be sung, or if our neighborhoods are worth protecting, or if we are allowed to walk in stores freely. If we must live, let it be a true life, one full of choices and opportunities, one that isn't designed to push us into a corner, keep us quiet and formidable, keep us without unique opinions and educated understandings. If we must live, and we must, let it be with our fist in the air, to remind the people that we will speak up for what is right. We will always stand up against that which brings us harm. We will demand what is just, not only for our own lives, but for the lives that are impacted by injustice. Let us live to fight for a better day, every day, for everyone. And the picture, because this is what I do on Reading for Kids. You deserve to see all that glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahogany. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody who asked questions and everyone who came today, participating in the chat and all of that. You can join us again tomorrow for a conversation with Rebecca Foon and Jesse Paris-Smith, hosted by our music editor, George Grella. And that's all. Everyone will be able to, you can find Mahogany on Twitter at Mo Browne. You can find the Brooklyn Rail on Twitter at the Brooklyn Rail, and on Instagram. And yeah, everyone's free to unmute themselves and say goodbye on their way out. Thank you all so much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. I added a review to your book, Mahogany.
Hey!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justice! We win!
Bit by bit. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Hey, Lynn, I loved your dancing. Love that. Anton's here. How you doing? Good to see you in your studio, Daddy-O. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. This was so lovely. What a beautiful afternoon.
Thank you.
Great bunch of people. Thanks, Mo. We got to get to our next Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mahogany.
Everyone, this will be on YouTube should you wish to revisit the wisdom. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Brooklyn Rail. All of you guys, you really do an amazing job.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Thanks, so.
Nope, I couldn't do it. Now I can.